So can everyone run pip install Django? Is that working? Yeah. Okay. I think we'll make a start then. So I'll give a quick talk about what we're going to be doing and like how it's actually relevant and it might be useful for your career or your design engineering projects. Um, so we're going to be talking about creating systems and apps with Python. When I say app, I use that term slightly loosely. So if you think about a web app, but you could also have a mobile phone app. This can all be powered by Django, which is the library we're going to be using today. Yeah, and I'm Freddie. If you don't know me already from either UTA or just general projects across the school. So you're going to need Python install, which you've hopefully already got, which you should have before the session. And you're also going to need some basic Python knowledge. I would say this is kind of an intermediate project that we're going to be doing today. And I'm going to do like in the first half of the session, I'm going to do a walkthrough of a basic project with Django. But I say basic to you, you might look at it and think, what on earth is he typing? But I promise it does eventually make sense. And then in the second half, hopefully you've got something which is a bit more engaging. I've got a project which I've already made for you, and you're going to pretend to be software engineers, and you've got to implement some features into that project. And there will be a prize for that project as well, that team challenge. So that's to look forward to. So essentially, Django is a library that takes your Python code and puts it on the internet so you can use it as a web app, which is very useful. Similar things would be Flask, if you've heard of that. There are other alternatives. Lots of big companies as well will use Django, but they slightly modify it, so it's not really Django anymore. But for example, a big social network, which you probably have, uses Django behind the scenes. So yeah, one thing you need to make sure before we get into this kind of tutorial is that the pip install Django command, which is at the bottom here. I've also sent an email to all of you with that document, which has all the links and the instructions I'm following. So if you look in that document that I've sent to you, there's a document called walkthrough commands. That's exactly what I'm following here. So as long as you have that, you can try and follow my steps if I go a bit too quickly. But I wouldn't stress too much about completely understanding everything I'm writing for the first bit. I'm just kind of giving you a glimpse into how we might develop a simple app. And then hopefully in the second half, you'll be able to kind of apply a little bit of what I've been talking about. So I just wanted to quickly talk about how it's actually useful for your degree. So last year I took part in IC Hack. You might have heard a few weeks ago there was IC Hack, and I used Django for that alongside our team. And our project, out of 500 students, we were the runner-up for the Cisco like lead sponsor prize. I've also used it professionally whilst working. I developed internal systems. So when I say internal systems, I mean systems that you might not see as an end user. So for example, Imperial and an internal system might be Blackboard, like you can't access that outside of Imperial. So I've done that kind of stuff. And then I've also done an actual mobile app with Django using React Native. And we had about 1,000 people using it for this science festival and scanning QR codes and things. So it's really versatile and it's really useful if you actually want to go and take this further. So yeah, I've already kind of talked about this. So big social networks use Django. Lots of big companies use it. As I mentioned, internal systems is a really good place for this, such as in research and machine learning, because a lot of the libraries you'll be familiar with for kind of machine learning and computer vision, that kind of thing, all are kind of programmed for Django, Python, sorry. And you can use that Python code within your Django app, and you've got a really nice prototyped web app. And because it's only used within your company, you don't have to put a lot of development time into it, and Django is really quick to develop. So that's why you see it a lot internally, but it's also used for big newspaper websites and things like that, and lots of blogs. So what we're going to be creating in the first half of this session is we're going to make a really basic portfolio site. And this is a fun fact, my website, do a refresh, but it actually runs on very similar code to what we're going to be writing, but a bit fleshed out. So yeah, we'll get right into it. So if you want to follow along, you can just watch what I'm doing, and then for the second half, you can maybe get a bit more in depth. But I would recommend trying to do the basics up here with getting Django installed and starting a project just to check that it's all working. But I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, which is probably what you've used for computing 1 and 2, if you've got there. And we're going to make a new folder. So I'm going to go up here and go, sorry, in a Finder or Explorer, you're going to go into your Downloads folder, create a new folder, and then I'm going to call it Workshop 21 Feb. You can name it whatever you want. And then you're going to drag that folder into your Visual Studio Code. And that should open your folder within the Visual Studio Code window, and just click yes, you trust. I'll give you a few seconds to just do that. And then we'll get started with actually creating a Django project. Great. So once you've opened a folder, and then I'm going to open a terminal, and you should see at the bottom it says your username, and then it says the actual folder you're in, which means that we're kind of working in that directory if you're not familiar with the terminal. And I'm going to do Django dash, oh sorry, you're going to do pip install Django first. So that's pip space install space Django DJANGO, and you press enter and it will install, or for me it's already installed, so I don't need to do anything. Again, all the commands I'm typing are in that document if you need to check back. So I'm going to type next Django dash admin start project portfolio site, all one word. And then that's going to make a new folder, which you can see up here within your directory, and then it's going to make another folder. And this is setting up your Django project with all the kind of base blocks that it needs to start building an app. So the project kind of houses the main repository for all your kind of files that you're going to use within the project, and you then make an app, which is what we're going to do next. But before you do that, you have to go into the portfolio site directory. So to do that, you type cd and then space portfolio site. And then once you're in there, you can do Django admin space start app, and then we're going to make a new app called core. And the way I'd kind of explain the app system is if we think about at Imperial, Blackboard, if you look at Blackboard, you've got course content and things like that. And then you've got another section for undergraduate info. Maybe the course content is one app and then the undergraduate info is another app. So you kind of separate it. Or in a business, you might have like a website for employees, which is internal. You might have a page for checking your pay slips. So that might be like their pay slips portal, that might be an app. And then you might have another one for like a weekly newsletter, that kind of thing. So we're just going to make one app to keep it simple, and we're calling it core. And then in here, if you look in portfolio site, in settings, we need to add some things. So settings has automatically been generated for us, and we need to add some additional controls so it performs as we want it, and set it up for our project. So one of them is we need to add an import, which you should have hopefully done before in Python. So at the top, I'm going to click import OS, and then down here, I'm going to add to install apps an additional app called core. So that's just registering the app we've just made. And then down here, we're going to go to doers, and then we're going to type this command, which looks quite intimidating. It's basically just saying that all our kind of website templates are going to be in this folder. And this command is essentially saying the folder is going to be in this root directory here. So in portfolio site is going to make a new folder called templates, which is where we're going to store everything there, but we'll get there in a minute, and I'll explain a bit more about that. And then down here, we're going to add 2 new lines for media, which is where the uploaded files are going to go. I realize this probably looks like, what is he typing? But this is all from Django documentation, which you can find online. So I don't know this off by heart. This is stuff I've got from the documentation and just adapted for the session. So a lot of this is kind of self-taught off online resources. So don't stress too much about completely understanding what all these lines mean. And then what we're going to do is I've got something about migrations. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You can skip those 2 commands. We're going to do python manage.py create super user, which is this. And this is essentially Django has built in a system for automatically managing all your what they're called models. So if you think about Instagram, if you scroll through, you've got posts. So that would be an example of a model. And a post might have an image attached. It might have a author attached, which is a user. It might have who's liked it attached. And we need to store this in a database. So Django does all this for us, which is really helpful. But to manage that database, we need to have a user. So we're going to create one. And before you do that, you need to type the migrations thing. I thought we could skip that, but no, we have to do that first. So you need to python manage.py migrate. And then it's going to do that database setup, which I mentioned. Django is doing a lot of complicated stuff behind the scenes, which we don't have to worry about. So do python manage.py migrate, and then python manage.py create super user, and it's now going to let us create a user. And if you press enter, it should just leave it with the default username, which is F Nicholson, which is my username. It will be your username. And then enter on the email address. We don't need to do that. Password, I'm just going to do 1234. And then 1234. It's then going to tell me it's a really insecure password. Just press yes. And then you created that new user. And then I'm going to do python manage.py run server, or in separate words. And then it's going to say server running at this thing. And then if you go into your web browser, you'll be able to type localhost :8000, and you'll get this screen, hopefully. And I'm going to wait and if you're following along, let me know if something's not working. But you should get this screen when you've done that command. So I realize some of you haven't quite got that screen yet, but few things I would say. Some of your Python paths look like they're not working correctly. So on Windows, I would just uninstall, and then you've got an option to reinstall Python, and then you can click add Python to path, and that will fix most of your issues. And then just make sure you're following through in order. So don't add core before you created the app in the settings, because otherwise your Python won't work. But don't stress too much if you're getting some errors as we go along. Hopefully you can kind of see what's happening, and then this is being recorded. You can play it back and you can see what might have gone wrong. Yes, Nika. We're going to have another example of a session later on where we're going to have another app where you can have a bit more hands-on experience. So I'll just show you how we'd make a basic portfolio site, and I'll talk through some of the things we'd consider. And then in the second half, I can help you with any issues you faced maybe. But this should be pretty straightforward, but there is a bit of stuff we have to type. So either watch or follow along. So I'm then going to go back to my Python, and I'm going to go to my views.py in the core folder. So in here, you'll see there's nothing. It says create your views here. And this is essentially like the pages of your website. And if you look at your sheet, you can see there's a index page. So I'm going to add that up here. And the index is essentially when you visit a website, it's the slash. So if you go to www.google.com/, it's the root directory. So it's like just Google, or in your computer, it's the home folder. It's a bit like that. It's when you don't have anything typed after google.com. So I'm going to make a HTTP response, which is a Django specific thing. And I'm going to write a little message saying, hello, you're at my portfolio site. And then I'm also going to add another import because we need to import that Django specific thing here, which is HTTP response. Whoops. And then I'm going to go to portfolio site URLs. And it's already done some stuff for us, but I want to add another thing. And that is the URLs for our core app, which we've just made. So I'm going to use this command here. I'm just adding the line path include core.urls, which is going to include all the URLs that we're going to make in core, which don't exist yet, but we're going to do that in a second. And then up here, I'm going to add an include to the import, just so it knows what include is. And then I'm also going to add this additional line here, which is telling it that you need to use that folder I've told you about in settings to get any images that are uploaded to our website, or it could be other files, but in our case, it's going to be images. Again, this is Django specific code. I wouldn't stress too much that it looks like something you haven't seen before. If you look online at like Django documentation of things, this is all pretty standard stuff. And then I'm going to add another import here. And then that's that done. And then you can see here, I'm actually getting an error in my web server saying there's no core.urls. What are you talking about? And that's because we haven't made it yet. So we're going to go into the core folder. We're going to make a new folder called called urls.py. And then I'm just going to copy the urls.py here. I'm going to paste it in here, remove the static bit, and then remove this line here, and then change this. So instead of including another set of URLs, we're actually going to load that index view we just made, and it's going to be called index. And we need to also import the views. So to do that, you go in here, do from dot import views. So when we do from dot, that's saying get this folder and import the views for the specific folder. And this is where it can get a little bit confusing, because you can see we've now got two URL files. So in the browser, you can see there's a URLs up here for core and there's URLs for portfolio site. So the portfolio site is like the main project URLs, and then the core URLs is just for that app. And that's really useful for being able to organize like your different URLs, which you might have. If you think about a website, you see there's lots of URLs at the top of the page. They need a way of organizing that. So this is how they do it in Django. And then if I refresh, oh, it can't connect. I think I need to restart my web server. So if you go in here and Control C this, and then type in manage.py run server, and then refresh, you can actually see we've got a very basic hello world if you're at my portfolio site. And you're probably thinking, if you've done HTML before, that is not impressive. I could have done that in 5 seconds in HTML. But trust me, it gets a bit more exciting. So if you go back to your views, you can actually add in here. I'm going to add in an F string. I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's a way of being able to run functions within a string. So I'm going to put in here, for example, I've got in here, I think, the current date. So if we import date time, and then I do datetime.now, and then I save that. I've used the F string notation to say there's something here that I want you to run. I'm going to refresh, and you can see here it's actually saying, hello world, you're at portfolio site, and then it's saying the current date. Now, obviously, that's not a very nice date. It's not very well formatted, but you can imagine that might be quite useful. You might want to have a date on your page for whatever reason, or you might want to pull in a matplotlib plot. If you're doing your projects, I'm trying to think how you can apply it to your coursework. So maybe you're doing HCDE and you've developed a watering plant machine, and your watering plant machine has a number that comes out of it, you could have your number in there that displays on your page. So there's a lot of opportunities here for what you could do. But for now, we're going to carry on and we're going to create a template. So yeah. Okay. Okay, well wait, I do realise I'm going very quick, but yeah, I'm conscious we've only got 2 hours, so. Where's that, sorry? Yeah. Yeah, is it views here? This is, what did I type? Oh, this, oh yeah, here. Is it, yeah, don't worry. I realise I did quite a few things there, like F strings and stuff, which you might have not seen before. And there's a lot of content from Django specifically as well. So don't stress too much. So I pressed Control C on the terminal, and then I typed Python space manage.py space run server, and then I ran it, and then I just refreshed the page. That should automatically refresh, but sometimes if you have an error, it crashes out and it won't refresh. Is it working? Oh no. No, it's in URLs. Okay, I'm going to continue. I know you might not be here, but trust me, we're going to get something working, and then I'm going to give you some example code which you can take away and use, and then we're going to get on to the second project, and then I'll be able to do some more hands-on help because that's a bit more self-led, but I'll teach you the content for this. So in a folder, yeah. Uh, so I copied and pasted the URLs from the portfolio site into core, and then I slightly modified it, but it's exactly the same as the one in the document. Yeah, no worries. So we're now going to make it so you can return an HTML template. Now, I don't know if any of you have done HTML. If you haven't, you're going to do it next year in computing too. But it's pretty straightforward to make a simple template. If you look at this file, you can see there's a my projects template that we're going to make. So if you create a new folder in portfolio site and then make a new folder called templates, and then create a new file called projects listing. And then we're going to type this code that is in the document. So this is an HTML template, and it uses this weird caret symbol formatting. It's called XML. And basically, it's a way computers represent data. So we can use it to represent the data of our website. So in here, I've just created a few elements. So HTML saying, oh, this is a big element for an HTML page. Body is the contents of that page. And then H1 is the header. And then UL is unordered list. And LI is list item. So we're going to get a bullet point list in a second. So, right. Yeah, so we've made that template, and then I can actually reveal this in Finder and go and look at the page, and it'll open up in a second. So you can see here it's a very basic page, but that's not with Django. That's just in Google Chrome. It knows how to read HTML files. We're going to get Django to return that page. So to do that, we need to change our view, and we're going to use a different response. It's called render, and this is a helper function. that Django gives us. Again, this is a specific thing with Django. Don't stress too much that it might seem like roll with it. It's built into Django and it helps us return a template that we can use for returning templates and adding in information, which I'll demonstrate in a second. So I'm also going to create this new variable called context, which is a dictionary, which is essentially going to store kind of things that we might want to display in this page. Yeah. So now if I go into my local host and refresh the page, you can see I've got that projects page, and you can see it's got what I hard coded in. But what we want to be able to do is actually dynamically adding content. And when I say dynamically, I mean adding in stuff on the fly and being able to manage it and move it around without having to hard code it. And you'll get what I mean in a second. So if we go into our code again, we're going to create a model. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't. Essentially, a model is a representation or something in Django. So an example might be a student or a class. It might be an item on a shelf in a shop. So we want to model something in code, essentially, and interact with it. And Django has a load of really helpful code that makes the logic behind this much simpler. And I know looking at this, it might be like, what am I writing? But if you were to write this manually and like code all the logic for this to make it work, it would be a lot more code. So this is helping you, but you do have to refer to the Django documentation to help you. But hopefully with this session, you've got some code which you can take away and maybe use for your projects and modify. So you don't need to fully understand what's going on. But you can see here, I'm creating some fields for this object. So my project is going to have a title. It's also going to have some content where I'm going to write about it. And I'm just using built-in Django field types to do this. Here I'm adding a field, which is a Boolean field, which is true or false. And that's going to represent whether the article is published on the internet. And then we're also going to add a thumbnail. So Django can actually handle like the image upload and the image storage for us, which is what we were configuring earlier in the settings file. And then I'm also going to let Django know what to return when I look at this in behind the scenes menu. So Django comes with a system, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which allows you to administer models and look at your database and edit it on the fly. And it's really useful and really powerful and really helpful for quickly prototyping. So I'm going to say what this object looks like to the end user, which is str, this function that's built into Python. It's a double underscore str double underscore. And it's essentially saying, what does this represent to a human? Like, if I was to read this, what would this mean? Because you wouldn't know. For example, I don't know. This is Freddie's laptop. It needs a label Freddie on it, so you know whose it is. Otherwise, you just look at it and think, oh, it's just a laptop. So yeah, I'm going to add essentially here, I'm doing another F string. I'm using the model title and the model PK, which we haven't added up here. That stands for primary key, and it's the way of representing a project within a system. So there could be multiple Freddie laptops in the world. So we need a number to assign to it so we can uniquely identify it. Anyway, and then I'm going to register that in admin. So I'm going to go into admin, which is this file that's automatically generated in core. And I'm going to do admin.site.register. And then I'm going to register a project. And I also need to import that newly created model that we just made here with project. Yeah. And then if I go back to my browser, there's actually a secret menu that I haven't shown you before. So if you go here and do /admin, you've got an option to log in. And then if I log in, and I've just realized, I think we forgot something. Yeah, we need to do the migrations. Okay, so you can see here we've got a project, but if I click it, it's going to crash. And this is what Django looks like when it's crashed. And by the way, if you launch this on the internet, you do not want this to be on the internet. This is bad if someone can see this, because obviously they can see all your code and that might allow them to hack you. So don't, if you're deploying this, if you get that far, make sure you don't have this on, which you can Google how to do. It's pretty easy. But before we get onto that, we need to fix the fact that we haven't migrated. So we've made a new model, but that hasn't been reflected in our database, which Django's using. In this case, Django's assuming that our database is on the local computer, but in the real world, it could be in a real database, like with Amazon or something. You can get databases through Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. So we're going to do another make migrations. So I'm going to type Python manage.py, make migrations. And then you can see here it said create model project. So it's detected that I've created a new model. And then I'm going to do Python manage.py, make migrations, press enter. And, oh, sorry, migrate, sorry, I meant. And then you can see applying this migration, which contains the fact change we've made. And then I'm going to type Python manage.py on server. And now, hopefully, if we go back and refresh the page, you can see that we've now got a nice menu, which allows us to add a project. Put it here. I realise I'm going quite quick. I'm just trying to finish before the hour so we can have a hands-on session and we can actually apply what we've done. Hopefully, that session will make it a bit easier to understand and you'll get what's going on. So in here, you can see we've got some projects. I'm going to add a project. So I'm going to call it, I don't know, HCDE. And I'm going to say my HCDE was a very exciting project. And then I'm going to publish it with this tick box here. And I'm going to click choose thumbnail. And then I'm going to pick a project picture. So this car image looks very nice. I'll put that in. And then I'm going to click save. And then you can see we've actually got a project, and you can see it's called HCD1, which was that naming convention that we decided beforehand with the title and the primary key. That's where that's coming up, if that makes sense now. And it's also behind the scenes, also uploaded that image. You'll see there's a new folder called media, and we've got that image. So we're storing that image. And in real production, what they'd actually use is probably like a storage service like Amazon Web Services. You can use S3. Yeah, by the way, if you are using anything like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Project, definitely make sure that you have two-factor authentication on your account and make sure it's secure, because it's very easy to rack up huge bills on those services. So if you're using something external, really make sure like your accounts are secure and you're not going to rack up massive bills from hackers like stealing your passwords and getting into your account. But anyway, that's an aside. In this demo and for your projects, you don't need to use those external services. You can do it all on your local computer. So anyway, now we've made that project and you can see I've done what I did in this demo. And then we're going to try out getting that project into our web page. So to do that, we need to go into the views, and I'm going to add a new thing to the context, which is our way of providing information to the page. So I'm in the core views.py, and I'm going to make a new projects field, and then I'm going to equate that to project.objects.filter. This is again Django specific. And I'm going to say published equals true. And this is basically saying get all projects which are published. And I also need to import here the project. You can see here, I have imported the project, and then I've got project.objects.filter. I don't have a extension installed in Visual Studio Code, so it's like, what are you doing? But it works, trust me. And this is going to allow us to try out the debugger. And I don't know if you've come across this in Computing 1, but it is so useful, and I encourage you to use it in the future when you're doing other projects. You can actually click on a point in your code. So I'm going to put here, and it's going to put a red point next to the 10. And then I'm going to click this run and debug icon here with the bug and the play button. And then I'm going to click create a launch.json. And then Python debugger. And then I'm going to go Django. And then I'm going to press enter. And it's made essentially a configuration for debugging. There is one change which I put in here. You need to add portfolio site to this here. You need to just do portfolio site / and then save that. And then if you run this, and first of all, make sure, I don't know why Figma's opening, whoops. You press Control-C on this server because you can't run 2 servers at the same time. And then click debug up here. So you click play. And then if you then visit your main root directory, you'll see that your Visual Studio Code highlights this line here because we've got to that point in the code and it's actually telling me what's going on. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I've got context, I've got request, and you can see all this kind of detail, which you don't need to see. This is all the stuff that Django is doing behind the scenes. But you can see here, I can see the projects. And in here under watch, I can add in context, projects. This is like a print statement. You know, you use print statements to debug in your computing exam. This is just a more sophisticated print statement. And I can say here that I want to see the first project in this list. And you can see the first project is HCD1. So this is showing us that the code is seeing those models that we just made, which is good. So I don't need to debug anymore. We know it's working. Okay. So now we're going to go back to that projects listing file. And we're going to, instead of going project 1, project 2, project 3, I'm going to add in a loop. And we use curly braces to represent things in Django, which are like code. It's called a templating language, liquid templating. And I'm going to say for projects, in projects. This mark here is a curly brace and then a percentage sign. And then I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to do an end4. And then for project in projects, I'm going to do a project.title. And then there's other stuff in this code, but I'll just show you this working first. I'm going to refresh, and you can see it's actually got the HCD project there. So it's loading that from our database and displaying it in our page, which we've made. And then we want to add a few more details, because obviously this is a bit ugly. So we're going to add a link, which is going to link to the project. So I'm going to say /project / projects.pk. And then I'm going to go down here and paste this in here. And then you're going to go into here and add an image tag. This is all in the document, so just copy and paste. And then I'm going to add a thumbnail, which here we're doing something interesting. So we've got project.thumbnail, and then we're doing another thing called .url. And that's built into Django, which is going to return that image's URL automatically. So we don't need to think about that. And if we refresh the page, you can actually see that it's got that image that we uploaded, and it's got the HCD project. And what's even more exciting, although it might not be exciting, so it depends on the level of how impressive this is, but you can add another project. So test number 2, hello, publish, and then add in, and I can refresh, and you can see we've got 2 models, and I didn't change the template, which is very exciting. Another thing, because we've coded in that logic, which allowed us to only show if it's published, is I can untick HTTPE being published, refresh the page, and now HTTPE is not published. So you can see, it might not be a lot of code to you, but it might be a lot of code to you, but to me, it's not too much code. We've actually implemented a lot of logic there, which is really easy to manipulate and kind of implement in Django without much work. And it's done all the kind of complicated stuff for us, like storing all the images, arranging them. You can also like filter them by different things. So maybe say they were in alphabetical order, you want to filter them by alphabetical order or when they were uploaded, that kind of thing. Only show it if a certain user's logged in. This is all stuff you can do with Django. So yeah, and then I'm actually going to show you how we can implement when we click this, that we display the content that we pre-programmed. So you can see here we get a page not found error 404. What we need to do is add another view. So I'm going to do that by going into core and then views.py. And I'm going to add a project view. So before we used a function, there's another way which I'm going to quickly show you, which is a class-based view. You will have done something with this with ducks, I think, in computing 1. Do you remember that? Yeah. So we're going to use that to make a web page. So here we're adding a project view, and then built into that is a get function. So you can see here, got a function with self and request and project ID. We'll get onto the project ID in a minute, but self and request are built into Django by default, and that just contains information about the self, which you've done before with the duck. And then you've also got request, which is all about the current request. So that will contain things about like the currently logged in user, what browser they're using, and other things related, which are more in depth within Django. And then we're going to create a context. We're going to create a context project. So it's not projects now, it's just one single project. And we're going to get that project by the ID number that we provide in the URL, which we've already pre-programmed in our view. You'll see here I've said, oh, whoops, it's crashed. Okay. So in here you can see /project.pk. I've already programmed it to, when you click on that URL, to redirect to that project. And then here we can then return that page using render. So you can go in here, request project.html, and then context, and then save that. I also need to do an import at the top as well. And then that's done. We also need to add to our URL. So to do that, we just copy and paste here. And then I'm going to change this to views.projectview.asView. And then change the name to project_view. And then here, we're going to do project/straw project_ID. And then we're going to create the project template. So to do that, we just go into templates and then create project.html. And then we're going to make a template for what this is going to look like. So again, very similar stuff to what we had before. This is HTML, which you can have a look into online. There's lots of kind of tutorials on how to implement this and make it look pretty. And you can see you've got project title and projects, project content. And then if I refresh, hopefully, I need to run. Let's debugger again. So now if I refresh and click, you can see that I can actually interactively work with the content. So you can see if I click each project, it actually comes up with the content that we wrote in Django admin. And I can also update that. So let's say test number 2, I now want to go and update here. I want to say, this is so cool. You can click save and then refresh, and then it's come up here. So that's the end of the portfolio project. I realize I went quite quick. Hopefully you can watch it back, maybe make out how some of it works. I'm going to show you how this applies in practice because my actual website is really similar. So, and you can see here now if I go on my website, it's actually got this really cool editor, which I made. And this is editing Django admin behind the scenes. So you see this publish article, that's basically exactly the same as what we just did with the publish field. So here you can see I've got this cool page here. I can untick publish article. And even though it displays in my backend, now if I go on my website, it's disappeared. And then if I go back on my control panel, which I coded, you could also just do it in Django admin, it's the exact same thing, and refresh. You can see it's appeared again. I can also edit the contents and things, but I won't do that. Kind of get the point. In terms of like the admin, it looks slightly different to what we were doing, but you can see here, intro to D, if I click that, you can see that it's all slightly more complicated what we did there. So the publish field is exactly the same. So if I untick intro to D, that would then remove it from intro to D. And then I've added things onto this as I go along, but I'm wanting to kind of refresh it and make it a bit more mobile friendly. But that's kind of what we were making, and you can take it that far. Obviously, this looks a lot prettier. I used some styling to make it look better. So yeah, hopefully that's useful. Yeah, so now I'm going to talk about the challenge we've got. So in your folder, which I emailed, well, not folder, the Google Doc, you should have some links to this sheet here, which is about a point of sale software. So I'm just going to make those public so you can access them. Yeah. And then settings. And then public. Right. Let's do it. Okay, so you should now be able to access the challenge project. If you go on creating apps and systems, that email you got at 6 o'clock, and then click CTF brief, is this document here. And then I'm going to hand out some of these. You can just do it in Teams in your table or with other people. Join whoever you want. No worries. Okay. So hopefully I've tried to add things that you can do, and I'm going to show you how to do one of them. So hopefully you can at least get 5 points. But essentially in this repository here, I've already built you a project. So if you go to get this GitHub link here and just click download zip and then extract it and then go in that folder, drag it into Visual Studio Code. And I can come around now and actually answer your questions to help you. So that should be good. So in here, you can see I've got the folder open, and I think I've already set up all the migrations and stuff for you already. So I'm going to go debugger, create. Actually, I think I've already created the launch.json. Oh, maybe it's not copied it. Okay. Or you can just go terminal, new terminal, cd, despos, and then Python manage.py. Run server. Where's that not? Maybe just in the root directory site. Okay. So now I've got that running, like we had the portfolio site running. It's just going to ask me to log in. You've got the username and password there. I can come around and do this with you if you didn't catch that, but once you're on this screen, you can see we've got this point of sale software. So if you don't know what point of sale, if you've ever worked in a shop or something, you might have seen something like this. Essentially, someone presses a button and it will add it to your order, and then they click checkout and it charges you. So we're going to be working. I think I added a little blurb about Mr. Burns has asked you to add some features to this point of sale software. So you can see here, if I click muffin, it's going to add a muffin to the receipt. And if I click pain au chocolat, it's adding all this stuff. And behind the scenes, we're using the same stuff that I just showed you with models. So each of these items here, if we look in the admin, you can see here I can go in cart entries. You can see this is what we've added to the receipt here. That's all being added as cart entry models. And if we look at the code, you can see all these different things I made. So essentially, we've got some products and product categories, which is what those things were showing up on the page, like the little buttons, which were the different products. They're all different models. And then it's pretty similar to what we did with the projects. They have images, they have a title, they have a price, which is how we calculate like the final price. We have a cart entry object, which goes in a cart. So each person that logs into the point of sale software, so each staff member has a cart which they can add items to. And yeah, you can see how we've written quite a small number of lines of code there with models. And then we've done some pretty advanced stuff, which is in the views file. You can see in here, this is all the different things that we've got. So yeah, I'll let you download the repository and get it running and working. And then I'll show you how to do the void transaction line. So you should hopefully be able to score some points. And if you work together, you can work on the same computer. That's fine. I've got 5 chocolate bars, which will just go to whoever got the most number of points. So yeah, the people who get good points have good participation involved. If you get any of these working, let me know and I'll come and check. Yes, sure. But try and get the point of sale software downloaded and then we'll see how that's going. I hope you've got the point of sale software to open. Yes, Michael and Christian, have you met? No, you haven't. Okay, it's opened. Okay, good. So in here, you can see void transaction. What we need to do is we need to get the user's cart, which you can see we've already done up here. So we can just copy that line. So copy this cart line here, and then just do cart.delete and save that. Now, if I go into the browser and just go to localhost and then just click void transaction, you can see it's voided everything in that cart. So I can add more items and click void transaction and it just deletes. That's all you have to do for that 5 points. So hopefully you can manage that. But there's also some additional things. So for example, adding a new product line in a selection of products is actually not too difficult if you think about it. You don't even have to write any code. You can go into the admin and just add a product line, add some products to that product line, and then that's pretty easy to do. And then the color scheme is also pretty easy to do. That's just editing the template. The receipt button is a bit more complicated. The remove button is a lot more complicated. The employee discount is pretty complicated too. You'd need to add a button. You need to add some logic, which like looks at your entire cart. and then deducts 20%, and then adding your own feature is the most points. So if you can think of something to add and show it to me, then that's cool. But I hope this is supposed to be giving you an idea of maybe if you went to do an internship at a company, they might get you working on a software project. This is probably the kind of thing they'd make you do. They wouldn't make you make an entire new project. They'd give you like a project they've already got, like some software they've written like this, and they ask you to add features or fix bugs. This is meant to replicate that. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about any of this or if your repository is not running. My portfolio site. It's not my portfolio site, it's the projects one that I showed. Okay, I'll show it. Hold on. As you saw earlier, we have a model for the product categories. So I can go in admin and click product categories. I just click add product category. I'm going to call it clothing. And then I'm going to add some products. So I'm going to just add one product for demonstration. So I'm going to add a t-shirt. I'm going to Google a picture of a t-shirt. I don't know why Cambridge University was the first option, but we get this black t-shirt here. Save that to my downloads. Just upload that. And then I'm going to add it by clicking on here to the right category by clicking clothing. Now, I don't know what's actually going to happen if I add it to two categories. I think it's going to add it to both of them. So I've added it to clothing and drinks. Okay, it's not very happy with that image. We get another image. It's because they're WebPs. They're annoying files. So I'm going to choose this picture that I've just taken, save it. And now if I go on the point of sale software, you can see there's a drinks category and there's a t-shirt, and there's also a clothing category and there's a t-shirt. But I don't really want the drinks to have a t-shirt, so I'm going to go into t-shirt and remove it from the drinks and just put it in clothing. And that will update automatically to here. So you can see I've got one t-shirt for £1 in the clothing category, and I can now add that to my transaction, and it works just like that, which is why Django is so exciting. You can create these models and achieve things really quickly. In your projects, if you imagine like going back to the water plant example, you could maybe take a reading every 10 minutes, which stores it in a model. And that would be in your Django database. And then you could take those readings and instead of displaying it in a table, you could display it in a chart. And one of the libraries to do this is D3. It's getting quite advanced, but you can see here, you've got lots of cool charts which you can do. You could do this all with Django. You could make this chart appear and have your data from your database appearing. So it's really powerful and it's really useful, but we're having a small start into it today. If you want to learn more, I definitely recommend looking at the YouTube tutorials and the Django documentation. There's also lots of example projects, but yeah, I'm here if you have any more questions about the software. I think we'll probably wrap up in about 20 minutes. Do you want to do, okay, I'll do a complicated one. So here's the void. I'll leave that on a second. Does anyone want any task in particular? Do you want a demo of any of them? I can show the employee discount if you want. That's pretty hardcore. Do you want to see the employee discount? Okay, I could do another one. Shall we do the remove item button? I feel that's quite a good one. Remove item. Okay. And then we'll wrap up, guys, because I realise it's late. Thank you for staying. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of add product. And then I'm going to type remove product. And then I'm going to do remove product here. And I'm going to rename, oh, whoops, I made a mistake here calling them all mistake receipt. Whoops, these should be different names, but they were. And then I'm going to make a new view called remove product. Your server will probably crash, by the way, when you do this. I'm sorry, I'm going very quick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, is there a product ID in here? I'm going to do cart entry ID. Because if you remember, each entry in that list is a cart entry. And then I'm going to go in here and change this to cart entry ID. An item to remove, we don't need to do that. Actually, yeah, we do need to do that. So, and I'm going to do, instead of product cart entry dot objects dot get pk equals cart entry ID. And I'm going to do item to remove dot delete, and that will just remove that item. And then I just have to, no worries, and then I have to go into templates, point of sale, and then I'm just going to add a button, which I can copy from down here. So avoid transaction, let's just get that. Delete. And then remove, I don't know what I called it now. Remove products slash individual product dot pk. So that's that ID number of the cart entry, I think. So now if we refresh here, it's not running. It's not running. It's running again. I made a mistake. So in URLs, I need a comma here. So then I'm going to refresh. Oh, now I've added it to the wrong thing. Whoops, sorry. Should have added it the other menu. In here, I should have added it to, yeah, entry.item.title. It should be entry.pk. And then if I refresh here, now if I click delete, it deletes it from the item. I realize I did that insanely quickly, but you can kind of get a gist of what I did there. So I added a new button that goes in the entry list. I used that primary key of that entry, and then I made a new function for removing that entry in the views. And when I click this button, it just goes to that URL and then goes back to this point of sale software. So you can see that's kind of how you'd implement that. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up. No worries. Okay. Also, I'll send you the code. I'll give you some chocolate as well. If any of you have managed to do the point of sale challenge, I'll give you some chocolate, which you can share with your group as well.